afternoon. First, I'll start with an apology. I'm the last speaker right before lunch, right? So that's never a good spot. But let me just quickly start off and continue my session so that you can get to the lunch quickly. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm just going to show you an agenda. So I'll just start off with a quick introduction about myself. I've already got one, but I'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about 3 categories of technology or practices that you should be aware of when trying to get your business or company flying off the ground. So let me quickly start off with an introduction. You would have heard that I'm part of a company called Enterprise Infotech. I'm a senior technology consultant in Enterprise Infotech. I've been working here for about 22 years. I also have this title called Microsoft Regional Director. Sounds very fancy, right? I'm not an employee of Microsoft. I'm completely vendor neutral. The title has been given, it's an honorary title that Microsoft gives to certain people in the field around the world whom they consider as experts in technology. So there are about 6 of us in India, and there are about 160 in the world. And we work very, very closely with Microsoft, both here in India and back in Redmond, Seattle. And what we do is we both talk about technology, especially Microsoft, but we also give a lot of feedback to Microsoft about what they're doing right and wrong in the technology world. What we get, we don't get paid a single rupee or cent for doing this, unfortunately, because the salaries in Microsoft are fairly nice. But what we do get is a lot of advanced information about what Microsoft is actually going to do in the industry, right? So as I said, I've been running this technology firm since last 20 years, and that's what my profile is. So let me quickly start off with some of the basic things that most of you will already know about, but I will just quickly reiterate and give you some experiences about how they are used in today's world. The first one is cloud first. Now, everybody is going cloud first, so why mention it here? The reason is that even when you think of a product today, whether it is a technology product or it's a non-technology product, what you need to think about is how that particular product fits in with the cloud. Let me give you an example. All of you are have IT backgrounds. Now, when you start working with the cloud, and this is something that we have seen across companies, is that when you start working with the cloud, the first and most easiest thing to do is move some of the servers that you have into the cloud as virtual machines, right? And you go ahead and do that, and that's fairly standard. Then you start looking at other apps or services that are available in the cloud, and you start deploying new systems into that. But when we look at very, very basic parts of your infrastructure, things like your authentication, things like your Active Directory authentication or your LDAP authentication, most organizations are wary of moving to the cloud for such things. What we say is that look at even moving your basic infrastructure into the cloud, because that allows you to expand the cloud reach of all your organization very, very easily. So when you think of logging in, right, when you open up your laptop and you log in, you're usually logging into a server or a system or a network that is local to your organization. Instead of that, in today's world, using a cloud-based login methodology allows you to do a lot of more things than you could without doing this. The second is something called multi-factor authentication. Again, this is something that you would have heard of, you would be probably using. You probably have that on your personal systems as well. So if you're logging into your Facebook or on your Twitter or into your Google Drive, you probably have 2-factor authentication already set up. But in today's world, your organization also requires 2-factor authentication when accessing resources. For instance, when you are logging into your maybe a system which has some very, very sensitive or confidential data, you should prompt the user for a second layer of authentication to make sure that it is the person that you wish to do. And there are many, many ways of doing this. I personally have a HP machine itself, and which is very nice because I don't even need to log in. I don't need to type my password. In fact, in today's world, there is a thing called passwordless authentication. Right? So it uses both a system of biometrics plus an OTP. An OTP need not be an SMS. It can be an app-based authentication like the RSA keys that you used to get. So things like that are there, which allows you to do a lot of authentication, and depending on the sensitivity of the data that your company stores. The third actually takes this a little further, information rights. Now, when we talk about content and when we talk about a person who has to access that content, in normal ways, what we talk about is what is the permission that we give for a person on that content. This is the other way around. What is the information or the rights given on a content for a particular person? Now, what is the difference between the two? How many of you have seen this movie called Mission Impossible? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know which is the number now, right? So Mission Impossible, every time Tom Cruise ends up getting a mission, right, one of those impossible missions, the moment he gets to hear or read or view what the mission is about, after that, that thing disappears, right? It blows up, it explodes. Okay, none of us are Tom Cruise, so it doesn't look as cool, right? There's no, blow up kind of thing that happens here, but information rights actually allows you in a technical world to control your content that way. For instance, when you say a particular piece of content in your organization is so sensitive that it should not be read if it's being read outside your network, right? You can actually have it that if a doc file, a MS Word file, is opened outside the IP address of your domain, it actually it encrypts itself and it destroys itself. It will not destroy the laptop like boom kind of thing, but it can actually go ahead and do that. That level of control is actually there. Again, this is something that you should have if you are dealing with sensitive information. The fourth thing, which is not purely technology, but is very, very important, is compliance with a lot of standards and regulations. Now, technology actually allows you to do many of these things. Now, when you're talking about standards and regulations, I'll mention things like HIPAA, which is the healthcare industry standard for the US. So if you're working with US healthcare, you have to work with that. PCI DSS, if you're working with credit cards and financial information, PCI DSS. And if you're working with anyone or any company in the European Union, you would have heard of something called GDPR, right? If you have not heard of GDPR and you're not working with EU, that's okay. But if you are working with the EU in any form, right, you should be aware of GDPR. Now, technology can actually help you be compliant with fairly strict regulations like the GDPR, because the fines, if you are found non-compliant, are horrendous, right? They start with 10 million euros. Start with 10 million euros. So using technology to be compliant with things like GDPR, HIPAA, PCI DSS, there are a bunch of other regulations, makes it much more easier to deal with. And finally, BYOD, which is bring your own device. Again, in today's world, this was not something that was really very popular even 5 or even 3 years back. But in today's world, everybody wants to use their mobile phones, their laptops, their iPads, their tablets, whatever it is, in the company network. Now, you can stop them completely saying that, okay, only company-allowed machines are there, but people expect to use that. And if you are allowing them, you also need to allow security services on that, right? And how do you do that? You can actually logically partition devices into both personal data and organizational data, so that if the device gets lost or the person leaves the organization, with a single click, you can make sure that any organizational data that is there on the device is wiped clean without affecting all the personal. So if I'm in an organization, I have taken photos of my kid and my wife and holidays, I also have organizational data in that, but I leave the organization and you wipe my entire device, I'm sorry, that's not done, right? You can't wipe my photos. But organizational data, yes, you can do that. So all of these things together are some of the basic things that you need to have. In terms of desirable, now everybody's heard of artificial intelligence. Now how do you use AI, right? Now AI by itself is a very, very vast term, right? It's an umbrella term that covers a lot of things. In fact, one of the things that I'll talk about is one of the implementations of AI called machine learning. But AI itself consists of neural networks, machine learning, deep learning, and many, many other things. Now, this is desirable because it will be at an individual organization's level that you need to decide what kind of AI do you want to use. Some could be just built-in AIs that you get as part of systems. Sometimes you will want to develop your own AI systems for automating certain tasks within your organization. And that's something that you can fairly easily do now. AI was hard to do maybe up to 2 years back. AI is very, very simple to do. Of course, depending on what is it that you wish to do, but AI comparatively has grown in leaps and bounds in the last 2 or 3 years, and the tools and the frameworks that are there are very, very easy to use, implement, add to your own set of processes, and customize the AI to work with that. Augmented reality. Now, augmented reality is something that is, again, very, very nice and desirable. It's a very cool-looking, hyped up system, but it can be very useful. Now, depending on, for example, if you're in the construction business, right, or if you're in the realty business, or if you're in a product design business, augmented reality actually works out very, very well. And it's quite easy to get into AR also. For example, you can actually build a car model or a house model and actually use that to see what it looks like in the real world. So you can actually place a car into this room and walk around it, see how it interacts with other items. And again, the tools and frameworks that allow you to do that are available very easily, and you can actually build this quite fast. Virtual reality takes it to a different level. So what is the difference between augmented and virtual? Augmented is that it places the virtual objects within the real world, and virtual is purely virtual. So for example, if you are working in healthcare and you want to do a surgical, you want to place a body on a table and allow surgeons to actually practice a very difficult operation on that virtual body rather than trying it out on a real body. So virtual reality, again, it's a very case-to-case basis that you can actually go ahead and use. And finally, big data. Now, again, this is a term that is used quite a bit, but basically what big data really means is that your data has to be very, very, first of all, it's a collation of data from multiple sources which you can go and use it in your organization, which also aligns with the data that you have in your organization, right? Now, I will talk about big data in a slightly different context a little further ahead. Now, I'm talking about the essential three. So these are the three ones that I'll spend a little bit more time on. The first one is business intelligence. Then we have productivity, and then we have something called machine learning, right? So I'll talk about these. I also have some demos, which I will try and show it to you. I'll have to walk up till there. So the first one, BI. Now, business intelligence is not a new technology, right? It's been around for, actually, it's been around from late 1950s to 1960s. But obviously, due to the availability of resources, the BI, the way that you use BI has evolved massively, right? It is much, much more easy to use BI in today's world than it was maybe 10 years back, even 5 years back, right? Now, when I talk about BI, the first thing that people think of is that pivot tables, right? In Excel, you can create pivot tables to analyze your data. Well, pivot tables is step 0.1 of business intelligence, right? That's the tiniest baby step that you can reach towards BI. What BI allows you to do is much, much more. Now, when you're talking about pivot tables, it's usually when you're analyzing one table of data and getting some kind of a drill-through mechanism in this. BI actually allows you to analyze different sources of data, right, and cross-analyze between them. In the BI world, there is a concept called an n-dimensional system, right, which allows you, so it's not just three-dimensional. So if you look at a pivot table, it's basically a two-dimensional system, right? To some extent, you can make it a three-dimensional system by allowing a drill-through, right? A business intelligence cube, or OLAP cube as we call it, is basically an n-dimensional system that allows you to cross-analyze in any form, whichever way that you wish to, and see insights which you may not have been able to even think of, right? Now, BI allows you to go ahead and create reports, dashboards, a whole bunch of other things very, very easily, depending on the tool that you're wishing to use. There are many, many tools that are, again, available. The one that I like to use is something called Power BI. Again, I'm not trying to sell you anything here. It's from Microsoft, but there are other ones that are available as well, right? So it allows you to actually go ahead and create all of this very simply, very easily. And the best part is, because now in today's world, AI has come into play so much, once you have your BI system set up or a BI model set up, the AI can actually go and find patterns inside your data, which you might never even think of asking. Forget about looking for it. You might not even think of asking for that. Let AI run on BI, and the AI will actually be able to pull out patterns and insights into the system, which will allow you to target your system much better or target your market in a much, much better way. The best part is that you also have the ability to use natural language processing. So you can ask modern BI systems, you can actually ask questions in English, saying, show me what is the, show me the employee who is doing the worst in sales during monsoon, right? And it will actually go and find that information. Or tell me which is the product that does best during winters. That's an English question that I'm asking, and BI will be able to actually pull that out and give you that data if you have the correct data model. There is a demo, and I'll try and show that to you if there's time. The second thing is productivity and communication. Make sure your teams are actually connected and working together. The previous session also, in fact, talked about having a team and, especially in terms of support. But here, I'm talking about every team, whether it's an IT team, whether it's your sales team, marketing team. There are products like Slack, there's Teams from Microsoft, there are other, Yammer. There are many, many different productivity, communication, and collaboration systems that are available that you should be using. I'll give you a quick example. One of the, not one, in fact, I can name out of the top of my head 4 clients that we've worked with who were traditional clients. They had IT systems, and we moved them onto a collaboration system, and I won't name which one. And you won't believe it, but their time to market has actually become much, much more efficient just in 6 months, right? Of using it, it becomes so much more efficient in terms of how you can actually go ahead and communicate. So even if a sales team member is out in the field and he wants data back from his team inside the office, it comes back to him instantly. So one of the things that you should explore is looking at things like Slack and Teams in your organization. Again, I have had a demo for this, but I don't think we have time. The final thing that is there is machine learning, right? Machine learning is a subset of AI where the computer actually, or the systems actually learn how to use or learn how to extract information from data that you give it, and then provide you with extra data. Now, because computers are efficient in repeat tasks, it can understand what the input, a little bit, or a sample input that you give, and use it to go and extrapolate to much, much larger data sets, right? Because you can use things like this, you can actually include machine learning into your applications. Again, if you are building your own applications, there are frameworks available for this which make it a very trivial task. The mathematics that goes behind something like machine learning is very, very complicated, but there are frameworks that are available. They just hide you from all the back-end mathematics that goes into it. All you need to use is those frameworks, and you get the benefit of these ML systems into your applications as well. However, I can ask you to start working with ML very, very easily. How many of you use Excel here? Right? Almost everybody does, right? Now, Excel, in its latest iteration, has so much of machine learning built in that it is unbelievable. Not just Excel, but almost all of the other tools. And it's not just Excel, but yes, other things like Google spreadsheets and all that also. But the way that you can use ML in something like Excel and PowerPoint and Word, and these are things that you don't think of in terms of how can ML actually be used inside this. It is actually very, very nice, right? How many of you are interested in seeing this? How many of you have seen ML in Excel or PowerPoint or in Office? Have you seen ML in action? I'd like to show you that. So if you're interested, I'll try and show you that. In fact, as you saw, I had all the demos after each, but I'll add it to the end. So if you have any questions, I'll take that up. In the meantime, I'll try and set up my machine, and I'll show you what ML looks like on Excel and Office. So any questions? No questions. So if you're not willing to run for the lunch, give me a couple of minutes, and I'll try and show you what machine learning actually looks like. So give me a minute or so. Hopefully, if the demo bugs don't hit me, we'll be able to see this. All right. So a little bit of adventure. All right. Okay. Switched. So what you see right now, the graphs are basically BI, but I'll just show you Excel first, right? So let me just zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'll show you a couple of small little demos first, right? So I have some raw data here, right? As you can see, I have just copy pasted it from some website actually. And you can see it's got a name, it's got an email ID, it's got, I think, gender, it's got a country, and it's got, I don't know what that is. It's a city, right? Now, this is all in a single cell. Now, what I want to do is I want to pull out the name, I want to pull out the email, I want to pull out maybe the gender or the country. Now, how do you go about doing this? Anybody got an idea? I mean, this is things that we do on a daily basis, right? We get some data. It's unfortunately in an unstructured format. It's not a comma-separated system. So how do I go ahead and do this? I can write a formula for doing this, right? I could write an Excel formula for doing this and experiment. Now, this is where ML actually works quite well, right? So what I need to do is remember that Excel is learning by itself. So Excel, as an engine, is already trying to figure out what is it that you're trying to do and help you in doing it. So all I'm going to do is first type out the name, right? So I want the first name, which is Suki. Okay, great, fine. Now in the second one, I say Dev. I don't know whether you noticed, but for a second, a ghostly image of names appeared, right? Which is fine, right? Now I write, what's it? And what I can go ahead and do is I can go and say Flashwell. So just by giving a couple of examples, it figured out that, okay, this is the name that I want. I can do the same thing. For example, I can say, China. If I want the country, I say, and I didn't even need to type the second one, right? I just typed B, and based on the pattern, the machine learning system actually figured out, okay, I want the names of all the countries from this, right? Now, you might say, okay, but that's just pattern recognition, right? It's basically if I write a regex or something like that, I'll be able to get that. Let's look at a slightly more complex example, right? So I have departments here, right? Finance and treasury, management, information technology, and notice that I have the abbreviations of each of those departments in the column next to it. So I want to get just the abbreviation. So what I go and do is I say IT, fine, and then I go and say Flashwell. Now, you will notice that it's kind of gone and messed up something. Oh, sorry, no, it should not have been IT. It should have been FT. So my mistake. So not the fault of, right? So, and then I go and say Flashwell. Now, it's kind of figured out, okay, FT is there. Now, what it's figured out, if you look at the pattern, in management, it went and said M, right? IT seems to be correct, HR seems to be correct, ALM seems to be correct, but look at change management. It says CMC, right? In case of sales and marketing, it says SMS. That's obviously wrong, right? The reason why it's doing that is it's taking the first capital letter of each word. So now what I need to do is, again, remember it's still learning, I just go and say MGMT, right? I've corrected it, and if you notice now, it's gone and corrected everything automatically, right? I didn't even have to do anything. It's corrected ALM, okay, I've written it as chef management, S&M marketing, right? It does that automatically in your system, right? This is one aspect of machine learning. Here's another one, right? I have some bunch of data here, which is sitting. It doesn't matter what the data is, really doesn't matter, right? All I'm going to do here is I go and say, show me some ideas. And what it does is machine learning actually goes and looks at the data that is there and pulls out all the different types of data analysis that it can. For example, here is one slide which says, not slide, but a chart which says China appears most often because that's the place that you sell the most, right? Here it says for country Thailand, sweets appears most often. That means the sale of sweets in Thailand is maximum. Now this is not something that you would have thought of to pull out itself, right? And this is something that you're getting from one table. Now Excel is limited to that. BI will take this to a yet much, much higher level of getting that. I'm just going to end with one more example, right? So let me do it in PowerPoint, right? So all I go and say is something like flying at 8,000 meters, right? Let's say that's my presentation. And what I go and say something like, show me some design ideas. And what this does is it analyzes the information that is there, right? It looks nice. Oh, there's a great background. But I am not sure you noticed the other thing that happened here. The background is great. But notice the subtitle of the presentation. The subtitle says, about the height of Mount Everest. It understood the context of what have I written. Flying at 8,000 meters. 8,000 meters, say somewhere near the height of Mount Everest. I didn't put that in. I did not type that in. I did this right in front of you, right? This is, again, machine learning. And this is just the simplest of examples that I'm giving you in terms of machine learning that is there. There are many, many more things that you can actually go ahead and do in getting ML up. If you're interested, I'll show you one example of AI in business intelligence as well, right? So this is my IT spend analysis that I can have. So I can, if I look at this, I can say, yeah, show me spend by region, right? I can do something like, it's not spend, I think it's amount. Nah. It's there something. I've forgotten what the item is called. So I can actually go ahead and ask it questions. In fact, as you can see, there's a field which says ask a question about your data. If you ask the question, as long as you know what the data is about, you ask that question, it'll actually try and find that data out for you and provide you with a graph or a table or a pie chart or something like that, which gives you that data if it is available, right? So ML, business intelligence, and other things really, really can help increase your growth very quickly. So if you have any questions, I'll take that up. Otherwise, thank you. Thank you for attending and being patient with me while I do all this jumping around, right?